Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach, Disney World's water parks, at one point considered to be the titans, the gold standard of the water park industry, have since fallen from grace. This downturn has been somewhat shocking to witness firsthand, as for a long time, these two water parks led the way in both attendance and revenue. Not just led the way, but quite frankly, dominated in those two categories. And it was deservedly so, as these Disney water parks were miles ahead of the competition when it came to technology and innovation, and especially theming, where Disney more or less pioneered the concept of having a fully themed and immersive and highly detailed water park. But as time has gone on, the competition has gotten stiffer. The market trends have changed, and Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach continue to get older and continue to find their experiences becoming more and more stale, while Disney just sits on the sidelines and watches the show. Allow me to demonstrate, folks. You see, back in 2009, Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach were number 1 and number 2 respectively in the water park industry attendance-wise, not just in North America, but worldwide. They were clearing the competition. It was domination out here. Obviously, the quality of these parks, as well as the backing of the largest theme park resort destination in the world behind it, led to these parks being able to just crush the competition and be the gold standard in the water park industry by a country mile. Flash forward 10 years and the story seems to have relatively stayed the same, right? Attendance is growing. Yeah, sure, they're no longer the leading water parks in the entire world, as some Chinese water parks have taken the lead, but still they're dominating North America. Nobody's even coming close. Everything is going fine and dandy, so we flash forward just a few years. You would expect that everything should stay a 55% drop in attendance in 4 years, huh? I mean, I leave you guys alone for just a few years and you fumble the entire bag? Like, really? So why did this happen? How did this happen? Simply put, folks, the main culprit here, the one that's attributing to the greatest loss of attendance here, is the fact that Disney just straight up closed one of their water parks. Now, no, they didn't completely, entirely, permanently close either Typhoon Lagoon or Blizzard Beach, but they now go with a strategy of one park being open and the other one being closed. And they rotate every several months, maybe even sometimes an entire year, but they rotate on and off from what parks open and what ones not. They are never open at the same time anymore. This was a change that was implemented post-COVID, and they have stuck to it ever since. And it certainly made sense to do at first in late 2020 and in 2021 when tourism was low in Orlando. And of course, people didn't really want to have anything to do with the germ-infested water parks. I completely understand it. But the fact that this strategy has remained in place has completely handicapped the water park business and has completely prevented them from ever having a chance of getting back to pre-pandemic levels of attendance and revenue. So why then, if it's obviously not a good business decision, why then are they doing this? Well, folks, the answer lies in the history. You see, folks, the story from 2009 to today is not as simple as I made it seem. There's a lot more going on in the background beyond Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach. As you see, back in 2009, there was this little park called Wet n Wild Orlando, which many people didn't even know this, but it was owned by Universal Studios. It was about as basic and bare bones as a water park gets. Universal did not build it from the ground up. They acquired it at a later date. And Universal knew that Wet n Wild, simply in the state that it was in, was never going to be able to be high enough in quality to compete with Disney World's water parks. And ultimately, post the opening, of course, the Harry Potter lands that really put Universal on the map and started to actually give them some glimmer of hope of being able to directly compete with Disney, they knew that they also wanted to compete directly in the water park business as well. And Wet n Wild wasn't going to cut it. So in 2017, they went ahead, they got rid of Wet n Wild, they bulldozed it, put some hotels in its place, the Endless Summer Resorts, and they went ahead and built a brand new water park from the ground up, their first creation of its kind, that being Volcano Bay. Not only did this brand new water park take a ton of plays out of Disney's playbook with the theming and the storytelling and the immersion, but also went ahead and took things to the next level by having state-of-the-art technology and the highest quality water slides and water park attractions money could buy. And the scary part is for Disney here is that based on what Universal was promising with this new water park, it really looked like Volcano Bay was going to open and run laps around the existing Disney World water parks. As over these parks' 20 plus year history at this point, they hadn't really received much of any investment at all. These water parks looked very much so like they did when they first opened in the 80s and 90s, meaning that Volcano Bay did stand as a rather big threat to Disney World's water park business. So what did Disney do about it, right? I mean, did they have a grand plan to overhaul the water parks? You bet they did. They put their money where their mouth is because they said, we're not going to let go of our grip on the water park business that easily. Are you kidding me, Universal? You can go ahead and build 10 new water parks. It doesn't matter. We're staying at the top of our game. So they went ahead. They walked over to Typhoon Lagoon. They said, you know what? We're closing the Shark Reef. Wait, what? No, guys, you're supposed to be building new things, not getting rid of things, especially not the Shark Reef, which is one of the most unique and special attractions that Typhoon Lagoon had. This essentially was a snorkeling exhibit where you get to swim with sharks, of course, harmless sharks, that is. And it was obviously a type of experience that normally at most water parks that have this type of experience would be a premium experience. It'd be a paid for experience, but instead it was included with your park ticket at Typhoon Lagoon. It was a huge added value for Typhoon Lagoon to have that sort of experience included with your regular ticket. And it was a great sort of a different type of attraction at this park compared to, your typical wave pools and lazy rivers and water slides. To have something that actually interacted with real life sharks and fish was really cool. And other than it being, of course, included with your admission, the other really cool thing here that was kind of done the Disney way was the fact that there was this giant submarine built next to the reef that you could actually hear the radar going off underwater while you were swimming with the sharks. Insane levels of detail that only Disney was capable of delivering, especially at the time of Typhoon Lagoon opening. And of course, we understand why an attraction like this would inevitably bite the dust. Of course, it probably was a very expensive attraction to put on. Maintaining the exhibit while also taking care of the animals was probably also very tricky and very challenging for Disney. So I completely understand why the attraction went away, but the timing is horrible. Having this closed just a year before you are actually about to face real competition in the market for the first time, literally ever, is not a wise choice. But Disney did have an answer to this. They say, we're going to close the Shark Reef, but we are actually going to add a brand new family raft ride to Typhoon Lagoon in its place. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Fantastic. And it was actually built on expansion land here as well. So it actually technically didn't replace anything, even though, yes, it did open right after Shark Reef closed. It technically didn't replace anything. It actually was an expansion to this water park, which was, a nice deal. And ultimately, this ride, Misadventure Falls, was just the first in a series of massive responses and a massive game plan from Disney to tackle the new threat that Volcano Bay was presenting to their water park business. So what did they do next? They went ahead and they went over to Blizzard Beach, right? Typhoon Lagoon had got their attention. Now it's time to renovate Blizzard Beach. So what do? They take a splash pad and they retheme it to Frozen. Boom, mic drop. It's over. Disney wins 10 times over. Sorry, Volcano Bay. You can't beat that. You just can't. What's that? You thought that Disney did more to respond to Volcano Bay? No. I said mic drop, guys. I said mic drop. Like that was the big moment. Like the splash pad, guys. Frozen. That's huge, right? Frozen. That's amazing. Like, are you kidding me? But yes, folks. Seriously, that is all that Disney has done since the opening of Volcano Bay to sort of quote unquote respond to it and address the competition that it was bringing to the table. As after all, we established this, right? Two of Disney's core competitive advantages, it being the leader in water park technology and innovation, those were being just trounced by Volcano Bay because it's a brand new theme park. It has all the new bells and whistles that these Disney parks don't have because they weren't getting updated over the years. They're being left alone and neglected and ignored for years. Believe it or not, a new water slide and a rethemed splash pad is not going to be enough to modernize these parks overnight. And in fact, Disney's lack of investment and lack of a response to Volcano Bay resulted in Universal growing their water park attendance by 44% over 10 years and biting into the gap between them and Disney by 10%. But with Volcano Bay continuing to gain ground quickly on these Disney water parks, things just took a complete tailspin in 2020 once the pandemic hit. Because as we established, this caused the water park attendance to take a massive hit. And it resulted in Disney having to close one of their water parks, going with the on-again, off-again strategy. And though this was a wise cost-saving measure by Disney, Unfortunately, what it did was it evened the playing field even more so between Disney and Universal. There were no longer 2 Disney water parks to Universal's 1. Now it was a one-on-one situation, and Universal had a water park that was 2 decades younger than whatever Disney happened to have opened that year. But here's the thing. We know that the water park industry is not doing great, right? We saw what happened to Disney, they dropped 55%. Yeah, maybe that's just because they have one of their water parks closed. Maybe it has nothing to do with the quality of the parks or the fact that people aren't really showing up to them as much as before. Maybe it's just the fact that they have one closed and that's just it. 55%, hey, that number makes sense as you just closed half of your offerings, right? Okay. And here's the thing too, if we look at the overall water park industry in North America, guess what? It's dropped by over 16%. It's still 16% off of where it was pre-pandemic. We're still in recovery mode here. So if we look at Volcano Bay, what we'll see is that clearly there's no... Well, folks, Volcano Bay has barely dropped in attendance since 2019. In fact, it is almost back to where it was in 2019. Mind you, this was in 2023, a year where Universal overall as a resort lost about 9% in attendance. Still, Volcano Bay is almost back to 2019 levels, and the gap between these two parks has dropped by 96% in 4 years. Disney's lead eviscerated overnight. And when we look at this, cut back in this and seeing that Volcano Bay was largely unaffected by this temporary drop in attendance as they were able to recover rather quickly, the fact that with 1.9 million annual guests, that Disney still hasn't been able to recover to even what Typhoon Lagoon by itself was in 2019. That was 2.2 million annual visitors. They're not even close to where Typhoon Lagoon was by itself in 2019. It's more than just having one part closed. It's also the fact that people don't want to go to the Disney water parks as much as they did back in 2019, whereas the same cannot be said for Universal's Volcano Bay. And with Universal opening up a brand new 3rd theme park to add to their offerings, that's ultimately going to attract a whole bunch of new visitors to the resort and ultimately make a lot of people make their whole entire trip majority about Universal, if not make the entire trip about Universal. It's going to further bolster Volcano Bay's attendance over the coming years, meaning that it's a surefire thing that Volcano Bay, believe it or not, is going to have higher attendance than the respective Disney World water park in just a few short years' time. But you may be thinking to yourself, well, hey, Disney has an ace up their sleeve. Just reopen that second water park. Bring back the 2-on-1 advantage of having 2 water parks to Universal's 1. That will help to keep Volcano Bay at bay, figuratively speaking, and prevent them from overtaking Disney in the water park business. And it will help actually lead to a revival in Disney's water park business. And I get what you're saying, but it's not that easy. There's a reason why Disney hasn't gone ahead and done this yet and why they've stuck to this strategy. And the reason why is because, simply put, there is no longer a market for a second Disney World water park. That has gone with the wind. It is done. There is no longer enough room for a second Disney World water park to exist here. There simply isn't. Water parks, as things stand already, are already an afterthought in an Orlando vacation compared to the standing theme parks. Those theme parks get, 10x the attendance that the water parks get, if not more than 10x. And now you're talking about the fact that with one Disney water park open, you can't even get back to pre-pandemic levels. You would think that having only one instead of 2 would mean that this one that's left open would have more attendance than you had in 2019 for one of the water parks. But instead, you haven't even caught up to that yet, which shows that already there's lack of interest in your Disney World water parks just in general. But now you were talking about more competition coming to the space with Epic Universe, meaning that guests on their week-long trip, on their itinerary, are going to have less room to make for a Disney World water park. As things stand already today, even with just one Disney World water park, let alone 2, the guests just don't have the time to make way for 2 Disney water parks. They just don't. And Disney knows this, and they know that if they were to open up both water parks, it would just split the attendance they're currently getting at the one water park right now with this on and off strategy, and that just wouldn't be cost effective whatsoever for them. By not investing in the parks over the decades where it was sitting at the top of the market, right? They could have kept investing in it and modernizing that park and bringing it up to speed year after year. Instead, they waited until competition actually came knocking at their door, did a little bit, said, that didn't do enough. Oh, well, guess we'll just sit back and do nothing and watch their entire market share be eviscerated overnight leaving them with a nearly impossible uphill battle with now more competition for days on a theme park itinerary for tourists, and the fact that it would take millions of dollars to modernize these water parks to be even remotely competitive with what Volcano Bay, and even to a certain extent Aquatica, is offering down the street. Simply put, Disney is never going to put that money on the table, because right now they're already throwing the kitchen sink at their dry theme parks in order to compete with Epic Universe, just to keep their attendance where it is now and not be siphoned away by Universal. They're throwing the kitchen sink at their dry theme parks right now. They cannot be bothered to spend millions of dollars to bring their water parks up to snuff when, as we showed before, those are a drop in the bucket compared to the attendance and revenue that the dry theme parks are bringing to the table, let alone the revenue and profits that the hotel business brings to the table, right? I mean, water parks aren't even number 2. They're at best number 3 in a priority list for these theme park resorts. So simply put, this has left Disney with no other option but to wave the white flag.
We surrender! We surrender!
It's over. They've given up. Disney cannot compete with Universal in the water park game, and they know it, because Disney would have to invest a ton of money to bring Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach up to snuff with what Volcano Bay is offering, and simply put, not only are they not willing to do it, but they can't do it because they're already putting all their CapEx into the dry theme parks and into hotels. And Disney is not even shying away from this. They're fully embracing it. They're fully admitting it. They know they've lost the water park game. They don't care. And instead, they're using the water parks now as a marketing pitch, as a selling tool to sell the rest of the resort, particularly the hotel business. They are giving away free water park attendance to all hotel guests in 2025 on their day of check-in. And that may look like, at first glance, desperation from Disney to get people to come back to the water parks, but no, it's not desperation. It's them sacrificing their water park business to bolster their hotel business. It's that simple. And the truth is that the downfall of these water parks was not caused by a series of unfortunate events. Disney didn't just get unlucky. This was a cold and calculated decision on Disney's behalf to bow out of the water park game. They could have been investing in their water parks for the decades leading up to Volcano Bay's opening. They could have responded much more strongly when they knew Volcano Bay was coming out down the line. And instead, they let their water parks sit there with minimal investment, sending their hopes and prayers to Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach saying, hope you make it out okay, when really, they just don't care. They just don't care. It's a very similar move, in fact, to Disney getting rid of the Magical Express, which was the bus that took guests from the airport to their hotel on Disney property and vice versa for free, and also getting rid of free Fast Pass and instead replacing it with paid Lightning Lane. It's the same thing. If this thing is not generating a high level of profit, then Disney will gladly cut it. And the fact of the matter is, Magical Express wasn't contributing any sort of direct profit. The free Fast Pass obviously wasn't making them any money, and the water parks not driving anywhere near as much profit or revenue as the hotels or the dry theme parks made them the next up on the chopping block to be eliminated given their high operating costs. And Disney's probably actually feeling pretty good about this decision when they look at their bottom line every year and seeing that expense be sliced in half and then eventually maybe even potentially completely eliminated if they do decide to just completely eliminate the water parks from their offerings. But I'm telling you right now, you want to talk about getting people to stay on Disney property. You want to talk about getting them to commit to an entire trip where they spend the entirety of it at Disney or majority of it at Disney. By getting rid of these experiences, by getting rid of the Magical Express, by getting rid of free Fast Pass, and slashing in half the water park offerings you're giving to guests, while also, not investing in those water parks and keeping them up to snuff with the competition, are all moves that are going to ultimately shift guests away from choosing to spend their entire trip at Disney and may even spend majority of their trip at Universal or somewhere entirely different because Disney no longer offers all of these value-added benefits for staying on property and doing all things Disney on your trip. They have cut those things to the absolute bare bones, and the water parks are just the next culprit of this strategy that people thought was done away with when Bob Chapek, the former CEO of Disney that implemented a lot of these paid for things and got rid of the Magical Express. A lot of people thought, oh, he's the only person delivering this. No. Bob Iger comes in and he says, you know what, I'm going to keep the ship rolling. We're just going to keep it hush hush. And that's exactly what's happened with the water parks. They've continued to go down in quality. They continue to get lapped over by the competition. And that's the fact of the matter too, is that by Disney waving the white flag in the water park business, us as the consumers lose. By having one less water park, one less option for us, we lose. By having Disney no longer invest in the water parks, we lose. Because guess what? Volcano Bay has a giant expansion pad behind the water park that Universal probably would have liked to have used in the coming years. But now they have no pressure to use it. If Disney is bowing out, if they're surrendering in the water park war, then why does Universal have to rush building anything in that space? They don't. And the fact of the matter is that Volcano Bay will likely look very much the same as it does now for the next few years, because Universal is going to be in no rush to expand this water park because Disney has no interest in playing the game with them. So it's a sad reality. It's a sad state of affairs for the water park industry, quite frankly, in Orlando, with Universal just dominating Disney over the head. It's unfortunate, quite frankly, and I think we all lose at the end of the day. But hey, that's the Disney way. And if you want to hear more about the Disney way and what they're doing to Hollywood studios and how it's a kind of a mixed bag of a future for that park, go ahead and click the video on your screen right now, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.